Hello everyone, Ladislas Maurice from the wanderinginvestor.com. So today I'm in Cali in Colombia with Patrick. Patrick, how are you?
Good. Thank you for coming, visiting me.
Fantastic. So Patrick has been based here in Cali for the last 8 years and he helps foreign investors get into the Cali markets. Today we're going to be discussing some of the key learnings that he acquired over these 8 years doing real estate deals in Colombia. And then we'll discuss the Strata system, which is quite unique to Colombian real estate.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, tell us about some of the key learnings that you acquired probably painfully over these 8 years.
Yeah, quite painfully. Meaning that probably been in more than 30, 40 real estate transactions by now. Some have been small, some have been big. But one of the most painful ones, I think I told you already, was when we basically lost a huge chunk of our net worth buying a lot here and we got scammed. It was a guy with a fake ID who sold a property that didn't belong to him. And now, 6 years later, that property is still in our name, but it's just held up in court. It's been going on for 6 years. The legal system here is very, very slow, so the best thing you can do is stay out of it, basically. But there's certain things that would prevent this from ever happening again, meaning that today versus that, there's a digital fingerprint recognition system that verifies that the seller and the buyer is really that person that they pretend to be. So back in the day when I signed, and this was back in 2014, it was just basically dipping your finger in ink, and then the notary public signed off that, yes, Patrick, you were standing here, you signed in front of me. But you could do that with a fake ID.
And didn't your lawyer notice it? Is that something he could have prevented? Or is it just the sort of fraud with fake IDs, fake documents you can't really do that much about?
I mean, I'd say they've closed that loophole for now. But back in the day, that's just the way it was. And I talked to the notary public when that happened and say, isn't that your job to verify that the person who's signing is actually that person? And said, yeah, you got to understand that the system is based on the good faith of the people. So that was a really, really vague and disappointing reply. So yeah, lesson learned for sure. But like I said, the government did take action, and not necessarily because of me, but because it happened a lot. And now it's impossible to do the fake fingerprint. But these guys were very organized. I mean, they opened a bank account with a fake ID and cashed a check with a fake ID, everything. So they were definitely not, it wasn't their first rodeo, so to speak.
What are some other things to watch out for when you purchase a property here?
I mean, I think one very important thing is that you want to do a title study and you want to do it with a good lawyer. And the reason is that there's been so much money laundering going on in this country for so long that a lot of these properties either are owned or have been owned by people that have been involved in drug trade and so forth. And what happens is that you can buy it, but you could probably never sell that property again because a Colombian will never want to own it. And one of the reasons is that they're scared that even if this drug lord might be in jail, he'd come out one day and he would want to get his property back, and he will get it at force. And that has happened. And even if he is dead, maybe some of his relatives are still in that industry and they would want to recover family property and so forth.
And unless you take a good lawyer, I'm pretty sure no one in the transaction will tell you that, right?
They try to not admit it, you know. They have something here called the Clinton list, which is a document, it's probably several hundred pages, with the names of all the people that you should avoid buying from. So that's one of the things that the lawyer does. They verify the history of the property, make sure that there's been no sketchy people involved in that transaction. It's a very important concept here to have clean money, and they do it by having a good lawyer to verify that everything's okay. Other than that, I think you need to work with professionals. This is a country of bureaucracy. This is a country where you can spend your whole day or your whole life basically doing loops around the city, trying to figure out, navigating red tape, basically. And you definitely want to avoid that. So one of the first times where I signed to buy a property, I didn't trust the messenger at the notary to do this trip to the title office to register it. So I went by myself, and that was 6 hours waiting in line. And I mean, you pay somebody $10-15 to take care of that in dollars. So definitely go with that.
Don't be cheap.
Go with good architects if you're planning to get a construction license, somebody who knows how to navigate the zoning, because if not, it could just be an endless paper hell and bureaucracy going through the permitting.
Yeah, because we were looking at one of your projects, one of your clients bought a large, essentially 1,000 square meter building with 7 apartments, and you're renovating all of them. It's a $1.2 million project. How's the paperwork? Like, how complex is it managing a process like this?
The licensing process or the purchase?
The licensing process.
I have 3 architects that I work with. So I have one that I really like. He's from Medellin and he designs very well, but he doesn't know the local zoning, and every single city is different. So I actually pay another architect from Cali here who used to work at the zoning office for 15 years to oversee the process, and he corrects him and says, okay, you need to have, you know, a fire escape on this side, you need to have an extinguisher here, you need to make sure that all rooms have ventilation, you need to make sure, you know, he comes with all these pointers. And so I'm actually paying 2 architects in order to get this done. I could work with a local one, but I really trust this guy and I know what he's doing, and he's very good at adjusting the design for our market, meaning that he knows what the foreigners want, and we furnish to foreigners, and that's what he's been basically designing for the last 6 or 8 years. So I work with him, and also their fees are very, very low. So the architect that I work with charges about $2 a square meter, just if it's a light design, and if it's a complete construction from scratch, it's about $5-6 a square meter, which is very, very affordable if you take it into consideration.
Yeah, no, that is.
And then it's just better to have that, and then I don't have to worry about it.
And how much are renovation costs per square meter?
If you do a light renovation, you can do it for about maybe $200 a square meter. And if you want to do a more extensive renovation where you change all the plumbing, all the electrical, the ceilings, the roof, the windows, well, then you can spend up to maybe $400 a square meter if you want to go really all in.
And can you tell us about the Strata system? Because when you come here to Colombia and you start looking at real estate, one of the key things is which Strata is this property located in? And it's essentially 6 zones. I'll let you elaborate on this.
Okay. The Strata system is essentially socialism in the works. It means that every single neighborhood and every single property is categorized from 1 to 6, 1 being low income and 6 being high end. And what happens is that it affects everything from your utility bill, your internet bill, your property taxes, and so forth. And usually, I mean, you would be able to see, if you're looking at something that looks like slum, it's usually 1 or 2. And then 3 or 4 is middle class, and then 5 or 6 is high end. The people that are in 5 and 6 are essentially subsidizing the ones that are living in Strata 1 and 2. So it's socialism in the works. And 3 or 4 are paying more or less the market rate for water, electricity, internet, and so forth. And also the notary expenses and so forth. Everything gets adjusted based on the Strata system. And also, for instance, if you want to go to university, you come from a low income family, then you need to demonstrate that you come from a low income neighborhood, a low Strata barrio, so to say. And I think there's one important lesson that we learned, especially right now. If you want to do short-term rentals, you're better off owning either houses, individual houses, where the zoning allows for vacation rentals, or you buy whole buildings. Because if you're planning to buy a nice unit in a gated condominium with a swimming pool and a gym, and it looks amazing on Airbnb, but the homeowners association is not going to allow you to do short-term rentals, which is a very important fact, because I think most people realize these days that you just have a way higher return on investment if you're allowed to do the short-term furnished rentals.
For sure, yeah, the numbers are quite interesting here actually. And yeah, the long-term market gives very low yields, normal long-term local market. If people stop paying, as a landlord, to legally get these people out of the apartment, how long does this take?
I haven't been in that process, but I've heard it's complicated. You're better not even reaching that point. And I don't rent anything to locals, basically. Of course, we have some Airbnb guests that come from Bogota and Cartagena and Barranquilla, Medellin, and so forth, but they're all short-term contracts, basically. So we've never had any issues with them. And also, the good thing when you go through Airbnb is that Airbnb has their credit card on file. Usually Airbnb has a really good customer service, and they help you in the event that you have any sort of dispute with a guest or so forth. Okay. And also, when you have a permit to rent to tourists, then you can also actually call the tourism police, and they will come and help you vacate if you have problematic guests. It's not the same as having a long-term contract.
Okay, fascinating. Let's talk about the financial aspects related to transactions here in Colombia. We were chatting yesterday that the process to get money in and out of Colombia is quite complicated. It's very doable, but it's quite complicated, and there's a number of taxes along the way. Can you talk about this topic? Yeah. So if you want to bring money into Colombia, the first thing you got to do is have a bank account here, and that can be quite hard if you don't have a local ID. So we work with a company called Alianza, which is basically a brokerage. They have investment funds and projects, but they will allow you to open an account just with a passport. They don't give you a debit card, but you get access to a portal where you can do payments and so forth. And the other thing is you're working with them, and you essentially get
a private banker that helps you. You have your advisor that's on top of everything that you do. And you have her email, you have her WhatsApp, and it's easy communication. If you go down and stand in line at any bank, you might get lucky. There's a couple of banks that allow you to open an account with just a passport, but you get treated like cattle. You got to stand in line for hours, and it's just a very, very long process. But also, if you're bringing in a large amount of money, Alianza has investment projects where you can park your money and earn, it used to be up to 8% interest a year. In pesos. Now it's a little bit lower, about 3 to 4%, but still, if you're just parking your money and you're doing $1 million project and you're pulling out the money slowly, it's good to create some sort of a yield at the same time.
And there's a financial transaction tax as well.
That was the next thing. Yes, there is a tax here. They call it 441,000. So every single time you move more than $1,000 in your bank account, you pay $4 to the government. It doesn't affect the lowest income families because you need to have at least $2,500 worth of movements in your account before it sets in. But all companies pay it, and as an investor, when you bring in the money, not to bring it in, but when you pull it out of Alianza, so whether you get a check or you wire money to the seller or whatever it is that you're doing, Alianza will automatically deduct that tax from your account. So that's the transaction cost that people need to have in mind. It's about 0.4%. And the same thing goes when you're bringing money in. Alianza or a bank would usually charge you anywhere from 0.4 to 0.5% on the conversion.
If you're interested in the Cali market here in real estate, there's a link below in the description with an analysis of the real estate market here in Cali. It's actually one of the highest yielding markets in Colombia. Patrick's contact information is also below, so if you're in need of a buyer's agent for real estate deals here in Cali, you can just get in touch with him.
Okay.
So Patrick, thank you very much for your time today. It was a real pleasure. Cheers.
My pleasure. Thank you.